is historian Bill Hosley, a museum consultant. He specializes in local history. Bill, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Lucy, good to see you.
You're here to talk a little bit about this lecture series being launched, focused everything about Hartford. Tell us about it.
Well, Capital Community College in 2010 created this Hartford Studies Project, which is a unique thing in higher education in Connecticut, where they use the content underfoot in this wonderful, rich, multidimensional city as a teaching tool. And they've done a lot with students, and they've decided that they want to do some public outreach. So this lecture series, the idea was that we're sitting on a goldmine of local history here, and we could do more to share that with the public, so that's what we're going to do.
What kind of history? So things that people really don't know anything about, or maybe have learned back in school and have forgotten?
Well, I think the topics we're exploring are actually things people don't know much about. I mean, one of the arguments is that Connecticut, because it's been around, been part of the American stories for 10,000 years, and Native Americans settled here, and then Europeans for almost 380 years, that we, there's sort of the American story plays out right underfoot, almost the whole of it. So, there are some epic, nationally known stories, but there are also a lot of ones that are just local and regional stories that are, we think important for people to know. Learn local, why Hartford history matters today. And we're going to look at, this question, why does history matter? What's special about it? What do we need to know? And, what is the place of history in community development and education today?
We're coming up on Black History Month. How will that be incorporated, Bill?
Well, in February, our theme is Black History is American and Local History. We have two other presenters, but I'm doing the one in February because a few years ago, my wife and I had this absolutely amazing vacation. We visited 47 museums in 10 days in the Deep South. And we went from Atlanta to Birmingham to Memphis and Knoxville. And the South is where the story of civil rights and the African-American narrative is being told with great sophistication. I mean, I think it might seem ironic that the old Confederacy is on the cutting edge of reporting this news, but we visited these incredible museums, and then, of course, the National Museum of African-American History and Culture in Washington, which opened last year, is astonishing. So I'm going to talk about the role of museums in bringing the narrative of African-American culture forward, but also bring it right into our own community here in Connecticut. There are a number of museums that have done very interesting things to incorporate either the story of slavery or other aspects of African-American history. And, of course, the Amistad Center at the Wadsworth Atheneum, but also the potential here, because there was a fellow named John E. Rogers who, in the 60s and 70s, amassed this incredible archive of Connecticut African-American history. And, we'd like to see something done with that.
Hearing from Bill about some of the reasons why this is important. Why, if Hartford is such a hotbed of history, Bill, why hasn't it become a go-to destination? What are we missing?
Well, I think Hartford, as I've often said, we've got $1 billion invested in cultural apparatus in the city. By that I mean, everything from the Bushnell Memorial to the Wadsworth Atheneum and the Connecticut Historical Society, Connecticut Landmarks. There's like a dozen house museums, and then the surrounding region has all this great stuff. And I think turning a place into a destination, it doesn't happen by accident. We just haven't put our hand to the grindstone on it, but we have a lot of untapped potential. And I think Hartford do a lot of good if there was more visitation. It would help, the economy. It would also help sustain these treasures that we've got, and it would generate buzz. They talk in the world of tourism about a global beauty contest, and that all these places, just like us making our way to Birmingham a couple summers ago, who visits Hartford? Well, a lot of people could. We have 20 million people within a day-tripping distance.
We're going to focus on African-American history, looking at Hartford as an origin point for philanthropy, also Hartford's art scene. Tell us about that.
Well, people think about New York and Paris, the centers of the art world, but every community, from tribal communities and rural areas to big cities and small, people make art. And some of the art maybe is timeless and enduring through the ages, but every place makes art. And as I always like to say, every place obviously has a history, But every place also has an art history, and Hartford has an amazing art history that you could say goes back to the 17th century. But Gary Knoble, who will speak on this topic on April 26th, has done this amazing in-depth study of, what was going on in the Hartford art scene during the late 19th and early 20th century. And it was just explosive and very, very interesting and had national influence. And this is a story that has never been told.
Bill, you're a longtime lover of history. When you hold these kinds of events, audience might skew a little older. How do you get more young people engaged?
There is, in this moment in Hartford, a growing interest in the sort of civic spirit of a place and how you create a dynamic, vibrant community. Young people are very interested in that. The people that are that like cycling, moving into cities, and that are promoting things like transit-oriented development and maybe moving into some of these apartments are thinking, okay, well, what are some of the elements of a strong, sustainable, vibrant community? And one of those, for sure, is an awareness of the stories that connect us to one another. This series should be of interest to people of all ages.
Often in Connecticut, there's a focus on people leaving the state. We know that young professionals do move here who may not know about the history of Hartford. What are ways to get them more engaged to even know about this history in their backyard?
Well, invite them to come on down. This is a free public series. Learn about why Hartford history matters from yours truly. Some refreshments, and it's a social thing. Come, let's do it.
Well, I want to thank Bill Hosley again.